As I just mentioned, the sanctions on Russia have not stopped President Vladimir Putin, at least not yet. Over the weekend, he put his nuclear forces on high alert, raising new fears of a nuclear war. For more on all of it, let's go now to retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman. Lieutenant Colonel, good morning to you. You have a unique cross-section of expertise here. You're born in Ukraine, came to America as a 3-year-old, rose to positions of expertise as the person specializing in Russia for the Joint Chiefs of Staff in our government and then the National Security Council. So few people know more than you from all sides of the equation. I'm curious at this point how we get out of a dynamic where everyone says we have to stop Vladimir Putin, but everyone also acknowledges that sanctions are not enough. So what more needs to be done? What can be done?
So Vladimir Putin is hoping through his nuclear saber rattling that he'll put us back on our heels. He'll get us to be deeply concerned about this potential for nuclear escalation. But of course, for those in government, they understand that the history is we've had to deal with this threat throughout the Cold War, throughout the Soviet period, for generations, for a couple of generations, and that we had to respond to Russia's belligerence and stay firm and in supporting our national security interests. So that's part of it, is just not to bend because of the nuclear saber rattling, because we've seen it before. But the other thing we need to do is we need to indicate that his actions have severe consequences. On the economic scale, we've never executed anything like this. For all intents and purposes, Russia's economy is isolated. There'll still be some energy flows because Europe relies on them, but it's an isolated economy. It's going to have a devastating impact. And then on the military landscape, which is particularly acute at the moment, the provisioning of Ukraine with lethal assistance, including these former Soviet-era aircraft, are going to be extremely important as Ukraine's air force has been significantly degraded. The provision of anti-tank capabilities, the provision of air defense capabilities, but there's more that we need to be doing. We need to provide UAVs that have been highly effective, these unmanned aerial vehicles that strike deep targets. But that's probably where we need to go before we really start to force Vladimir Putin to thinking about off-ramps. He's the one that initiated this war. He's the one that's going to make the first signals that he's willing to go ahead in a different direction. But we're far from that point still. Well,
we hope we get to that point, Colonel. I have a quick follow-up on the nuclear saber rattling. I hear you saying we shouldn't be concerned. He's done this in the past. But there are others saying that he is not the same Vladimir Putin he was 5, 10 years ago. He's changed. What makes you think, from where you're sitting, that he's still a rational actor? And I think you know what I mean by that.
Yeah. Well, he hasn't changed. He's not a madman. He's not suicidal. He's actually been incrementally increasing his aggression against the West for years. I mean, he used nuclear grade materials to poison adversaries, chemical weapons. He's targeted U.S. forces with bounties. He's conducted multiple wars, and he's not. The problem is that he hasn't faced a significant reaction. Now he's facing that reaction. This is something that he's unaccustomed to, but he's not a madman, and he's going to, once he realizes that this is legit, this has a major bite, and he's not achieving his military objectives in Ukraine, he's going to look for other ways to achieve his aims in the long run. Thank you.
Colonel, in a recent op-ed in the Atlantic, you said that Biden granted Putin a free hand. How so?
Well, it's really multiple administrations, 20 years of failed policy, and what that did was that kind of put blinders on to the broader landscape with regards to Ukraine. So what you have is the administration kind of looking at Russia through a soda straw. Within that soda straw, the Biden administration's leaned very far forward. They're on the leading edge of these sanctions. They're now providing weapons. But there's more that could have been done. We could see now the catastrophe that this war is, and that the likelihood of being limited and the U.S. stays out of it cleanly or Europe stays out of it cleanly is unrealistic. So my critique was mainly to learn from our mistakes, to stop an incrementalist approach, and to really start providing the kind of support to Ukraine that they need. So that's not the $350 million that the U.S. promised, but an order of magnitude bigger, $3.5 billion, and start thinking about a $35 billion debt.
Colonel, I wanted to talk to you about the Ukrainian people. No, it's okay. Many people are in awe, and in awe of the resolve and the determination of the Ukrainian people. I saw an interview with the mayor of Kyiv who said, "We are pressed, but we are not depressed," which I thought was very powerful. Yeah. Based on what you know about Ukraine and its people, what do you make of how they're handling this?
It's amazing. They are a shining example for the entire world. Certainly, our own population here in the U.S. Is drawn to it. We always love the underdog story, but it's more than that. This is a resilient, tough people fighting for their freedom, fighting for democracy, fighting for their homes. And the Russians were certainly not prepared for it. They had some false assumptions, and they're being ground down on those battlefields in Ukraine. But it's an amazing people, a population that I've gotten a chance to know that is in my blood also, for that matter. And I'm very, very proud to call myself a Ukrainian American.
Yeah. They're more afraid of losing their country and their independence than they are of losing their lives, and so they fight. Colonel Vindman, thank you very much.